in the world would you rather be as a Blue fan than watching your team now play this kind of footy?
Wait for it. Another entry. Oh, the big ride! McCarthy in game number 50. Yes!
Hello, I'm Damien Barrett and welcome to Access All Areas, brought to you by Virgin Australia. It was a blockbuster round that lived up to the hype, with the Lions and Tigers thrilling winners. And as I welcome Jimmy Bartell and Matthew Lloyd, did we see the game of the season on Sunday?
Well, I thought I saw the game of the season the day before. We mentioned the Lions and the Cats. I thought the pressure and the way it finished and the crowd rocking there at the Gabatoir.
I loved yesterday, Damo. I just went as a spectator and I thought I saw the best two teams in it. No disrespect to the Brisbane Lions or Geelong, but I think West Coast and Richmond are the best two in it. The way they used the ball, West Coast, in that first quarter, I thought we are seeing the premiership side. 7 first-quarter goals. Richmond's pressure meant nothing because their kick-foot skills were so good. But then Dusty, Prestia and the likes were so good through the midfield that Barrass and McGovern started just causing so many mistakes. And take a look at some of the vision of Barrass yesterday. He just got exposed due to the pressure of the Richmond midfield, and they got their setup going, and suddenly fundamental mistakes were being made by the West Coast Eagles.
Lloyd, did you just think this was just a bad day for Barrass? We all have them, we all make errors where it just doesn't go right, or do you think it was more Richmond's structure and the way they, as you said, applied that pressure?
It's a good question. I think Barrass just had a bad day, but in terms of they haven't been put under pressure like this in a long time, West Coast, and I think once the conditions got slippery, their foot skills probably doesn't suit wet conditions. Richmond have a game style that suits any conditions. West Coast, they're so slick by foot, Dame, I think wet conditions could hurt them.
It causes a problem from a ladder finish perspective in terms of a home final, but do you see anything that worries you now about what the Eagles can do in what lies ahead?
No, I think they ran into a very good Richmond side, and as Lloydie pointed to, the conditions are absolutely made for Richmond. Richmond can play in any conditions, but it just gets highlighted even in that wet, slippery stuff that was at the MCG yesterday.
Studs up rule was almost the dominant theme outside of the actual win itself by the Tigers. It occurred when Jack Rivold, you can see the time on the scoreboard there in the first half, and this was ruled against him for the studs up rule. It happened again later in the play. You can see Jack's reaction to it. As we speak, guys, there is a football committee meeting of the AFL going on, and I expect to be some form of statement to either sign off on those decisions, Jimmy, or to say they were wrong at some stage of today.
Well, the letter of the law is right, and you can't blame the umpire. He's standing there in the perfect position. He sees the foot come out, extend, push away the player. So you can't blame the umpire because that's the rule. But my issue is the rule was brought in for what was an exception. So before Toby Green, did we ever talk about it?
No.
And the Toby Green one was a general play. It was a handball and a front-on contact. If you just would have dealt with it then, we didn't have to go and create a rule.
What about the moment, so when Toby Green does, though, when a player's coming at him, does also stick the boots out, which is separate to the introduction of the rule, I concede, but that is a dangerous play,
Yeah,
sure.
that is. So to me, I think it's simple. I've never seen anybody hurt by someone, studs, the back, setting themselves for a mark. Front on, it's extremely dangerous.
Yep.
So if it's from behind, you're setting yourself for a mark, I think they should be given the all clear from today onwards.
Yep. So those two incidents,
they should be
wrongly
all clear.
adjudicated against Revolt.
I think yesterday they might have been rightly adjudicated, but if there's a change to the rule from today, they should be passed. But the front-on ones, they're fine. They should be penalised.
The surging Western Bulldogs have now won 6 of 8. They kicked the last 12 goals of their game against GWS yesterday. And they did it in a non-normal way in the ruck, Jimmy. This is some stoppages here and goals that resulted from stoppages with non-traditional ruckmen taking the play.
Yeah, and every one of these edits we're seeing, it's a different ruckman. It's McRae, it's Dunkley, it's Bontempelli, who are all massive midfielders. But it just shows in the forward line, if you don't have a premier ruckman, you just need to bring the ball to the ground, and how strong the Dogs are around the contest. They just need Norton, who can jump pretty high there. But they just got something really good at it. They're all on the move around the stoppage. That's how you can do it if you don't have the traditional ruckman in there.
So Tim English was a late withdrawal. Yeah. Does that mean he's now vulnerable when it comes to team selection?
No, not for mine. No, he's their number one ruckman. And as I said, Dawson Simpson and Shane Mumford don't worry me at all.
Right.
Yeah, so I think they need Tim English. on game one. They're just a dynamic midfield now, isn't it? 9 goals to 4 from stoppages. They are coming into this final series red hot.
Which is the opposite to what GWS is doing. For the second week in a row, failed to score a goal after half-time. It's a damning stat for a team that's going to play finals.
Yeah, it is. And look, injuries are an excuse there, but it's their form around the ball, and they got absolutely touched up by, we mentioned those names, Bontempelli, McRae, Lockie Hunter, Dunkley has just been enormous. So it was just a much better midfield performance from the Dogs.
Is the 8 set?
I've got the 8 set, Lloydie. I'll do the bottom half of the 8. I can see the Giants playing playing the Dogs again 6v7, and then I have Collingwood playing Essendon going down to 8. So I've really only got Essendon and the Bulldogs swapping spots in the bottom half. Yeah,
and I've got Richmond beating Brisbane this weekend, Damo, so that'll get Geelong up to top spot. I think so. Geelong will host Richmond in the first week of the finals, and the Brisbane Lions will host West Coast in the first week of the final, so that's how I think it'll fall.
Okay. Jimmy, back to your best game of the round, the Saturday game. Jared Lyons, you look at the additions of him and also Lockie Neal to this team. It's just incredible what he's been able to do. Charlie Cameron kicked the 5 of the 10 goals, but Jared Lyons set it up.
He's had a fantastic year, hasn't he? He's another midfield depth player. He's inside contest work, because when you've got Neal and Zorko, who are a bit smaller in the body, you need those inside players taking a fair bit brunt of the work. Not saying the others don't do it, but he's just a point of difference to the other midfield, and he's had his hand in all the big moments in this game, Lloydie. 28
disposals, 11 tackles, 9 clearances. This was a guy that couldn't get a game at the Suns. He wouldn't be doing this at the Suns because he's part of a brilliant team, but they underestimated just how good he was, and they looked at what he couldn't do, not what he can do. And I think he's taken so much pressure off Zorko and Lockie Neal.
And this moment we're about to see, it's one of the special moments of the season when Lick McCarthy flies and then has the true composure to go back and slot the match-winning goal.
Well, against his old side, the Cats, he's gone up where he played at Geelong. He played 29 games for 20 goals. This year alone at Brisbane, he's played 21 games for 20 goals. So the fact he's been able to get his body right, everyone at Geelong knew the talent and the ability he had. Just his body just kept letting him down.
The collective storyline of the Lions is one of these stories of the year, but there's some individual storylines within it. And Marcus Adams is now his own chapter, isn't it? Chris Fagan loves him, and he's now got some consistency into his game to know that he can be relied upon.
Well, this is a bit of drafting or trading for a need, Lloydie. Marcus Adams was a very good player at the Bulldogs, but when you looked at the Lions' back 6 setup, Harris Andrews is a very good intercept mark, also Darcy Gardner. So if you're trying to copy the best, say Richmond or West Coast, let's use Richmond for example. Gardner plays the Grimes role, and then obviously you need someone to come across like Dave Asprey. So that's what Adams does. So he goes and takes Hawkins. At least then you can free up Harris Andrews to come over and intercept the footy.
I'm looking at what they lack for to win a premiership. I think they're now with Adams and obviously Harris Andrews, brilliant. Midfield, I think bats pretty deep. It's just can Eric Hipwood and McStay and these types. Can you rely on Charlie Cameron to keep doing his thing?
I think he can.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's got himself almost into common medal calculations. He's going to fall just short. But I think you can answer that question.
So I suppose for mine, it's just one of those key forwards. Can they be that bullocking player come finals time?
Collingwood embarrassed the Crows on the weekend. We're just highlighting here some work ethic and work rate. In the circle, you've got Will Hoskin-Elliott and Paul Seaman, and you can just see the play unfold as to who was prepared to work harder.
Yeah, I'll touch on the positive here. I've watched a lot of Hoskin-Elliott play in recent times, and this is what he does week in, week out. Often you look down at the stat sheet at the end of a game with Hoskin-Elliott and go, geez, he had 10 marks, 3 goals, and you wonder how. That's how he does it. His work rate is at the very top of the tree.
Seaman was 50 metres behind him.
He cooked him.
After that
and that could happen, right, where a player gets goal side of you, but he did not ask someone to hand over for him once. So that was a team that was in survival mode. There was no team ethos whatsoever, and they were badly exposed.
Where does it leave Don Pike? I know he's contracted for next year, but it was an ordinary performance in a season already full of them.
For me, I think they need to even go further back now. I think they need to make heaps of list decisions. So, mate, Jenkins might leave. Bryce
he will leave.
Yeah, Bryce Gibbs. You know, he's probably got no other takers. But you've got to make decisions on Tex Walker maybe not being captain.
And Greenwood is
you know, they've just got so many players. I'm not sure what happens with Richard Douglas. So there's just so many decisions they've got to make as a football club, and they may have to go backwards to go forward.
Okay, so from one set of Crows to another for the latest Virgin Australia footy families story, here's a snapshot of the feature on the Rainbow Crows.
It certainly provides their members with a safe space to be able to come to the football.
Didn't matter pronouns, didn't matter chosen names or legal names, they could just be who they are. It's honestly been one of the most heartwarming things I've ever done.
And for more, head to afl.com.au/footyfamily. It was a big opportunity missed by the Power on Saturday night against the Kangaroos, who were led from the outset by Ben Brown up forward, and the man we now want to focus on, Todd Goldstein.
He was absolutely dominant. His best game for a while, but his last 18 months, he's been back in that ripping form that we knew when he was All-Australian. But his tap work, his ruck work, he had over 30 disposals, Lloydie. He was just simply dominant.
Some will say it's the best game he's ever played.
It might be.
Yeah,
might have been.
34 disposals, 22 handballs, just setting up his teammates, and 6 inside 50s. And it'll be interesting. Scotty Lysette, it's amazing the fall from grace for Scotty Lysette. Laddams and Ryder have been good for a couple of weeks, but it was Zach Clark and another inexperienced ruckman last week. So Goldstein, I think outside of Grundy, he's nearly the best ruckman in it.
Do you?
Yeah, I think so.
Still had a contract. We'll touch on him in a moment. But it is staggering to think that Lysette's not part of this Port mix, given they got him across.
Well, they backed Laddams in, and as Lloydie was saying, he was very good in his first game up against Essendon, and then the young ruckman from the Swans. So you still had to go with the hot hand. What do they do at the end of the year? Obviously, they've got kids, but what about Ken Hinkley then, Damo? I know obviously all the jobs are going to be taken, and Hinkley has a contract, but the pressure, David Koch, you can be explosive.
Look, both the Adelaide teams had disastrous weekends, and they're not going to make finals on the way we read it now, and as such, the questions deservedly will come. Do you think Pike and Hinkley will both coach their clubs next year? I've got a feeling one of them won't be there, and I don't want to sit on the fence and say which one that is, but something's going to give at one of those two clubs the way I feel at Brewing. Jared Roughhead got himself back into the team yesterday, and it was just great the way the Hawks players looked for him from the outset, ended up with 6 goals, and you can hear the crowd getting behind every single one of them. Yeah, it was absolutely awesome. Geez, he had a lot of space. So this would have been like playing against the VFL for him, Lloydie, but better ball use under the roof from your midfield talent. But if you're a Gold Coast player, surely you knew every single entry was going to Jared Roughhead. Yeah, what a wonderful career he's had. The talk now is, do they take him to Perth? That's a big decision. Well, they can still make finals. As weird as that sounds, if Adelaide beats the Bulldogs and they beat West Coast, they're in the mix. So it's Mitchell Lewis. If he's fit, I think Clarko will play Mitchell Lewis. If he's not, I think Ruffy has to play. That was the 6th of those goals, and you can hear the crowd getting behind each one. Carlton had a really good win at the MCG the previous day, didn't they? It was David Teague's first game officially as coach, and it was the veterans who have helped transform this team and who stood up on this day as well. Yeah, Cruiser, Thomas, Simpson, Casbolt, even Curnow in the middle was big. Mark Murphy had an absolute blinder of a game, and look, those guys have been through a lot of tough times, but their form has still been pretty good. And listen to the crowd there. When Big Cruisy went near it, they were going up every time Daisy Thomas threw a balk. So it was good times for Carlton fans. But when the whips were cracking, all these big moments, you look at the time, it was all the experienced players and veterans who stood up. And this is who they can add to their team. Liam Jones, Jacob Wiedering, Charlie Curnow, Caleb Marchbank. And if they can land Steve Coniglio and Tom Papley, look out next year for Carlton. They've got money to burn too. They were able to even offer Dylan Shield the money that he did want last year. In that he went to Essendon, as we know. But I'm raising that because the money was there for 2019. There's going to be more money available for 2020 options. So they will be massive players in whatever form it comes. No doubt, Damo. They've got the Cats, so I was interested to see how they go against top-end team this Saturday night. Bombers did what they had to do. Shocking loss to Port Adelaide 2 weeks ago, a worse one to Western Bulldogs last week, but just assured themselves a berth. I really like what they did. I like the way John Worsfold carried himself during the week after that horror of the 104-point loss. He also made some good moves. So Paddy Ambrose. So they lost Hooker pre-game. So you thought, their defence has been weak. And he took Ambrose out and had him run with Nathan Fyfe. So it was bold coaching. He put speed on the game like he does. They just couldn't cope with it, the Fremantle Dockers. Having Michael Hurley back as well made a huge difference. So, brilliant win over in Perth. A couple of deliberate out-of-bounds adjudications on the weekend, which annoyed supporters. And also this one with Callum Mills was a deliberate across the line. What do we make of it? So the question always the umpires ask is, are they under enough pressure? Now, a lot of people say, well, he was within the 9 metres, the 10 metres. They should get the free pass. But I think the umpires decided you had plenty of opportunities. Are you okay with that? Yeah, I'd like to see. Are you okay with this Gary Ablett delivery? No, people say because I'm a Geelong man, but look at the two players where it's landed. It's nearly half volleyed Darcy Gardner. Yeah, I agree with Jim on both. I think Mills was a good decision and these two are bad decisions. That was a player under pressure who's made a poor kick. And sometimes the umpires, it's tough
to know what's a poor skill disposal and what's deliberate. I think they got it wrong on those 2 occasions.
Okay. As we head towards round 23 and the finals, make sure that you're game day ready before you catch public transport to the AFL. Plan your journey at ptv.vic.gov.au/getmetothe-game. Now it's time for the Access Big Ask, and the first one is to both of you. Who's the biggest winner from the weekend, the Lions or the Tigers?
Lions for me.
Tigers, because it's got them a top 4 double chance now.
Yep. To both, if Darcy Moore's available to face Essendon on Friday night, does he play forward or back?
Back.
Yeah, back for mine as well.
Okay, Lloydie, Chris Scott, was he being disrespectful to query Charlie Cameron's 5-goal performance against the Cats?
I'll say no. I don't think disrespectful is the right word, but I don't think he understood, probably as a coach there, just the influence that he had on the game. Damo, one for you. Will Todd Goldstein be at North Melbourne in 2020?
It's pretty simple. If they come to the party on a 3-year deal, he will be, but at the moment it's 2, and at the moment he's still looking, and that's his call to make. Jimmy, is Carlton making a mistake saying farewell to Daisy?
Not really. His best 3 weeks have been his last 3 weeks, but the way it's been explained, I think everyone's sort of comfortable with it.
Yep. And to both of you, which team in the bottom 6 is best placed to make the finals next season?
I'm on the Carlton juggernaut.
You're on.
I'll go someone different. The Swans. I think the Swans have almost done a rebuild within the season. We've seen half a dozen young kids. Add back Lance Franklin.
Blakey's a superstar.
Yeah, you've got some star young players.
All right, you've both brought some material to close the show.
I did. It's a funny, but it's also a tip of our cap to the world's tallest man, Aaron Sandilands, and his good mate, Hayden Ballantyne. Sandilands, he goes, well, no one's going to be able to chair me off, so why don't I chair the little man off? They're 2 good mates. Look, flips him up onto the shoulders. A good way to go out. 4-time All-Australian, 2-time best and fairest, and Hayden Ballantyne. Every player hated playing against him, but wished they were his teammate.
All right, and my one, you got to know you're in a movie. Say there's a movie, and Roughie was like Tom Cruise. He didn't play. Gunston needed to know his role in the movie. He's just an extra, right? And he's got in the way of the star Tommy Cruise there, and you got the booze for it. So you got to know your place, Jack. It wasn't about you.
I've never seen a bloke so disappointed to be taking your mark inside 50. Lloydie, Jimmy Bartell, thank you, and thank you for joining us on Access All Areas, brought to you by Virgin Australia. Have a good week, and we'll see you next Monday. Goodbye.